Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Okay. Okay, we are ready. Oh, are you ready? Is that the loudest you can do? Oh, nice. I can see some familiar faces. Great. How many of you is your first time at the JS Monthly? Okay, and that's great. It's great to have you here. We have been running this for a long time. How many of you know Alex, the camera guy? If you know Alex, it means you have been going to meetups for a long time because we used to do it together, really back in the days, more than seven. Yeah, yeah, exactly. So I'm a veteran, let's say. So yeah, so I was planning an event for CityJS in Athens, and then Jason, who's here, he told me I want to come and talk in Athens, and then he told me that he's coming to London. So I told him he only probably thought I'm only in Athens, but he didn't know that I'm also in London. So I thought, okay, let's put a meetup up, right? So we said okay, and I called it a surprise because we didn't expect it, to happen. We had one, I don't know how many days ago. It was 2 weeks ago. So we do it once every month. What is it? Oh, you do this. I don't know what that it means. We are developers, so Okay. So, okay. You still do this. Don't do it. Okay, I'm just joking. You're still doing it. I don't know. Anyways, yes. Sorry, we have these funny moments because we are all a family here. So, yeah, this laptop. Okay, so this is the JS Monthly March Meetup. This is not the only March Meetup. We have another one on the 20th. So we are doing two this month. We might do three. You never know. So if you want to follow us, this is our Twitter. I don't think we have a blue sky yet. Everybody who has moved to blue sky, not mine. Okay. Um, so I work for Foolproof, and I'm very proud that Foolproof just said, "Okay, do it here," because I couldn't have find a venue in just weeks. So we're doing it here. So how many of you know what is Foolproof? So that's why I brought Laura to tell you what is Foolproof. Make some noise.
Yay, foolproof. Hi, everybody. So I'm Laura Soman, I'm the marketing manager for Foolproof. So I should really know what Foolproof is. In a nutshell, I shan't bore you. We're a digital product agency, digital service design agency. It's been around 20 odd years. Um, if you want to know more, you can look on our website. So yeah, that's it. I'm also, while I'm here, going to take the opportunity to just do some basic housekeeping. So yeah, welcome to Foolproof if you've not been here before. Where if the fire alarm goes off, we need you to leave, but we don't want you to leave forever. We need you to sort of congregate out by the other side of the road so we can count and make sure that we haven't left anyone behind. Hopefully that won't happen. If you need to use the bathrooms, come and find me at the front desk and I'll sort of point you in the right direction. You'll need a little card to get through the door. You can just pick one up and pop it back when you're done. That would be brilliant because we don't have enough for all of you lovely people. Yeah, I think that's it for me. So yeah, thanks for coming and filling our room with joy. Thank you.
Okay, so we are hosted by Foolproof, but the food came from this man here from Google, and we also take a bit from CityJS because we are a community conference. Okay, so Yes, we have a big event coming up in April. How many of you know Ken Scott? Yeah, so he's coming. Today I posted a video with him speaking about the stuff that he's going to be talking about. How many of you know Rich Harris? Yeah, so he's coming as well. So we have a more than 30 speakers. It's going to be in 3 different rooms, so you can choose what to watch. It's like all in one day, but then the recordings will go to all of you after the event. So you get exclusivity for all the talks. Um, so this is the like some of the people from the lineup. How many of you know that in Node 23 TypeScript is natively included? So this man here, Marco Ippolito, is one of the people that worked on that version. So he's going to be there. I don't know if you know FPS. So it's a library for TypeScript and a Node backend, I think. So we have the creator, should be somewhere here. But yeah, there's so many people. And you probably know Zach Jackson from Module Federation. So he's coming as well. So there is, yeah, this is the guy from Effectier. So Angular, how many of you Angular? Yeah, we have an Angular. But yeah, no, everybody's laughing. But yeah, I mean, banks and I think airlines use Angular. Eh? And the UN, yes. I like that. Okay, so we have 2 days React bootcamp. So if somebody wants to, it's an advanced bootcamp, so it's 2 days, and that is 3 people that are doing it, and it's 2 days. And I don't know how many of you are Italians. Okay, so I'm gonna be emceeing in JS Day in Bologna. It's a 2 days event, and we have a code for that event. Bologna has a lot of pasta and what's the other one? The pasta is yeah, yeah. So what stokes get fat. That's all about. So yeah, today we have this our event, and we have two really good speakers. Francois, we work together. He's an accessibility guru. I mean it because he has given me a lot of work on our website. He won't leave me alone until I fix all the problems. So it's a good opportunity for you to learn what kind of. Somebody asked me actually, do you know a tool to do accessibility? I think it was one of my colleagues. So I told him, why don't you come and watch the talk from Francois and find all about? Okay, so this is gonna be us developers taking it a bit more seriously. Because some stuff that he was telling me the other day, I didn't really know about them. So it's good to know. And then after that, we're going to have like a 10, 15 minutes break. And then we're going to have Jason that came all the way from Google headquarters in San Francisco. I went today to his office in Google in King's Cross. And when I came out, I was feeling like drunk without having any alcohol. It was like a different kind of world and the stuff he was telling me about. So yeah, enjoy. Thanks everyone.
Okay, is that working? Everybody hear me? Oh, yeah, it seems to be working. Okay. I hope I don't have to tell people what accessibility is or tell people why it's important. It is, but this is not the talk in which I convince you that it's important. Hopefully, you are already aware what it is and why it is important. It's a little bit of a grab bag, really, of tools and methods. It was originally sort of something that I spoke with in the design guild here. I'm actually a UX designer, but also front-end developer in a previous life. But so things are relatively superficial, so we don't get into JavaScript, I don't think, in this talk at all. But even though accessibility very often starts from the kind of the concern of the UX people, really the rubber hits the road and on the technical end. So much of what actually makes something accessible is down to how something is implemented in the HTML side. Anyway, but this is looking at tools, methods, and some examples of testing for. When might you be testing accessibility? You might be doing a formal audit on a website, sometimes a client's website. You might be part of QA during development, or it might be, ideally, hopefully, just part of the normal design and development process. So all of these tools some of them are applicable to all of these. Some of these are more in one or the other of these steps. And there's going to be some familiar suspects of things which I'm sure most of you probably already aware of, but hopefully there are a few things here that none of you have, or some of you haven't seen before, and you might want to take a note of. So let's say, for example, you are doing an accessibility audit, looking at the entire website. So one of the first things that you're going to want to do there is just to make the job manageable, just define what is the scope of what you're testing. So you don't necessarily want to test every single page. It's more a matter of sort of how many page types are there, because if the site's template driven, which it probably is, then there are the same problems you find on this page, you'll find on every single one of the ones that share that template. Also, when you prioritize, you want to focus on, obviously you want to test absolutely everything, but usually, realistically, you have to choose a subset or representative sample of pages. So choose those things that are absolutely critical paths in your journey, so that when there are failures on those paths, the site just doesn't work for those people. And those are obviously your highest priority. Also, if you are going to do testing, I've seen people sometimes just do random testing and they put screenshots into a Miro board or something like that, and they annotate it or put a Word document and just list things randomly. You want to use an issue tracker because it needs to be, you want to be able to, well, they need to be granular. It's like one issue per problem. They want to be trackable. So like, what is the status of this thing? Have we fixed it yet? Are we fixing it or not? You want to be able to prioritize these things. Is this a high priority issue or is it a low priority issue? And also, because you have an entire page for to describe an issue, you can be as helpful as you possibly can. Because if somebody's going to fix this eventually, you want them to know exactly what you're talking about and don't want to waste any time trying to understand what the issue is. I've mentioned to you, this is a screenshot from just Notion, which we use internally. It's ideal for doing this sort of thing, but obviously any issue tracker such as Jira or whatever would work perfectly well as well. Basically, you want to be able to have this tagging for status and severity and so forth. Yeah, there's an example here where you just put in sort of screenshots and so on of what the issue is and describe what the issue is. You might also include suggested solutions. So we kind of have a template internally for describing an issue. So what is the affected page or pages? What is the severity? What is the issue description? And I'm recommending here you include screenshots because very often even a URL might not be enough because you might be midway through a journey, you might have a full shopping basket or something like that. So you want to be able to just screenshot exactly what you are looking at when you identify this issue. You might also include in here what is your test method or related guidance to either something on the WCAG that talks about it or other articles that talks about that issue. So we've kind of created this template in either Jira or in Notion in order to just make it easier for the person logging this to do so in a helpful way. For yourself, you have to decide what define what severity means. This is what we've used internally, where the higher severity are the ones. So if you want to legally meet accessibility obligations under soon to be incoming European Accessibility Act coming in June of this year. Like so many other legislation, they basically require conformance to WCAG AA standards. So that's usually what you're going to be aiming for. And so high severity is it fails that, and it is also part of a key journey, or it fails that, and it occurs on nearly every page. So it's a very frequently occurring one. The medium ones are the ones which fail, but they don't affect key journeys, or they don't affect users very often. And then the low ones, they don't necessarily fail your legal obligations, but they still present a barrier if you want to fix them. Okay, and then there's always a question as to whether you do automated or manual testing. Obviously, it's not either or, you have to do both. And there isn't really a magic tool that is going to be the one tool that you're going to, that's the only one you need. I was at the accessibility conference yesterday, sponsored by a company that does accessibility software, who had a pitch for AI powered accessibility evaluation, which they claim is going to reach 100% sort of identification of all issues somewhere in the next few years. Myself and most of the other experts, they were quite unconvinced by this sales pitch, but we'll see how things go. But right now, there isn't a single tool that you'll be using. So automated tools, they are scalable. You can run them automatically across lots of pages, and it's quite useful for them to be part of your whole development and build process. But it's unreliable. You are going to get lots of false positives or false negatives. Manual is really essential, but obviously you can't test absolutely everything. I would usually recommend starting with manual, because if you start with automatic tests, then you are going to be sidetracked by low priority or spurious issues which don't really exist. So if you start with the manual ones, you can really prioritize which are likely to be the main issues, especially if you do this a lot, you will know which are the likely things that you're going to find. Okay, so the very familiar one for automated testing, well, it's one of many free browser extensions, Web and Wave. And you might have your own preferences, try them all. Active Tools is one that they were the sponsor of the conference last week, who are going to be moving AI into their tool soon. Stark is another one, Microsoft Accessibility Sites, these are all browser extensions. When you run Wave on the web page, you'll see something like that on the right-hand side, where it overlays lots of little icons and lists the icons along the left-hand side as to what it found. That's the summary view, the details view gives you more details about each of these items. Order shows you the source order and the tabbing order through the page. The structure, that's one of my favorites. It basically shows the outline of the landmarks and the heading tags on the page, and contrast, text color contrast. Now, but if you start with this, you're going to get sidetracked by things which are low priority, and very many of them are actually unhelpful, and I'll show you later an example of that. So anyway, start with manual testing. Like, one of the first things you can do is just keyboard navigation. Just get used to keyboard navigating web pages all the time. The first thing you do is just start tabbing, shift tagging to go back. That just takes you through all the focusable elements on the page. But actually, it's not just tab and shift tab. Many people don't realize that there are other sort of browser standard keyboard shortcuts for all form controls and other elements. So there's a web page there that just make sure you have a look at that. Like, for example, if you go onto checkboxes or radio buttons, do you know what keys you use to go through them and change those values? You basically would tab through them. Spacebar would set or unset that value. Arrow keys would go up and down. Arrow keys also look inside of select boxes and so on. So when you're keyboard testing, you kind of need to be familiar with all of these keystrokes, because people relying on this for browsing the web, people using screen readers or braille readers, or people unable to use a mouse, they will be using these things all the time. So you basically be needing
VoiceOver on. Safari. We do this by identify product and design. Expand card. Button. Collapsed. Double tap. VoiceOver on.
The aria hidden equals false property on that, which is kind of meaningless. Basically, just it's not hidden, but it is hidden using CSS. But that aria property, aria property
VoiceOver on.
background. So obviously it's not white on white. So that's the type of thing it often gets wrong, which is one of the reasons of contrast errors on your website, even though 80% of them are actually false. During design, you've got plugins such as contrast, which just basically tells you whether something passes contrast ratios of with small text or large text and so on. Other quick tests, I kind of like this Mac utility called Xscope. It's been around for decades. One of its many features is it'll overlay just a frame on the screen which simulates color blindness conditions. So just visualize what things might look like. The examples here on the left is the top one is actually not a problem because you can't distinguish things by color alone. But in this case, you've got both text and color, so that's fine. But this one, the second one, that is a problem because if you can't distinguish the difference between those colors, then you can't see which fields are highlighted. Other quick tests, checking whether things adapt to any screen size or any font size. So you should be able to resize your fonts to 200% without losing any content going off screen or anything like that. So the keyboard shortcuts. So a lot of these things are talking about keyboard shortcuts because you want to be doing these things as quickly and as easy as possible. So your font resizing in your browser or your font resizing in your smartphone. Well, I've added the font resizing as a shortcut to the control panel, but there's other ways of getting to that as well. Also, checking what the browser looks like, checking what it looks like at various sizes in your desktop browser. In Chrome, you'd switch on the web inspector and it would obviously show the responsive view. In Firefox, who here uses Firefox? More people should use Firefox. Anyway, Firefox actually does it nicer than Chrome does with Command-Alt-M. Anyway, you don't resize your browser window. Use this view instead because when you resize your browser window, then you kind of ruin how the web inspector works at the same time, or you can't easily read off what is the resolution that this thing is currently displaying. So always use the responsive view. Also check whether you are adapting motion to people who have difficulty viewing screens with motion, are sensitive to motion and would prefer it disabled. So if you've got lots of things animating into view when you scroll, or animating on mouse over, or just playing animation automatically, well, users should be able to turn that off. And there's accessibility settings built into the operating system. We can go into your preferences here and switch reduce motion on, and then those things should be turned off. And the way you implement that is the CSS media query called prefers reduce motion. So whenever you do these kind of animated transitions and so on in your CSS, make sure you've got a preferred use version of that doesn't have that animation in it. Okay, quick HTML checks. Well, there's the usual suspects, which always are wrong. So usually heading hierarchy, you can't go from an H1 to an H3, H5. It needs to sort of follow a proper structure. So that's one of the first things that you do when you just look at the HTML. Some of your extensions might help you with that. Check what landmarks have been used. Landmarks such as the nav landmark, the main landmark, the footer landmark, and other regions. Forms, checking whether labels are associated with form controls, various ways of doing that, and also whether correct semantic markups are being used. So you don't just have a div which is acting like a button. You don't have something which should be a link which is being marked up as a button, or you don't have basically, as far as possible, use the semantic native controls, HTML elements that are meant for things, and then the accessibility sort of comes out of the box. Okay, so this one a little bit more for designers, but as developers, you might actually be encountering that as well. So how do you communicate certain accessibility requirements to developers during the design process? So you get these annotation kits. Which gives you kind of a standard little label that the designer can use to specify what heading level should be used, what the page type, all of these things which are otherwise invisible in a design. So you might not see that in at the moment you just kind of have to guess that, but in this case, all of these things can be specified in your design documentation. So it's kind of useful for when you do specifications. You put a control like this, in what order should this be tabbed through? It should be tabbed through the things on the left first, and then those things on the right, rather than from left to right. And when you do website reviews, like for example, I'm flagging up there that the wrong heading tags are used, those heading tags instead. Now, I'm a little bit cautious of this one, accessibility annotations, because it does become a little bit overwhelming. You can't do this for every single screen in your design specifications. It's just, there's going to be too much of it. Also, a lot of these things I would like to think should be common knowledge for the developer implementing it. And also very often the designer might not actually have the necessary knowledge to say what the correct landmarks or the correct heading or elements. Something should be a button or a link or so forth. Very often the developer is the best place to make that judgment rather than the designer. So I use this some of the time and on some selected screens, but it's not a case where you will literally be doing this laboriously for every single screen in your design. Alt text, we can talk a long time about alt text, but I'm not going to. But instead, for deciding whether something should have alt text and what alt text should be, whether it's if this happens to fall under your remit, there's a decision tree here. You can see it as a flow chart, or you can just see it as a kind of a link here, which just helps you decide, does this need to have a alt text and what should it be? This tool is actually quite useful for on the technical side. It basically contains very systematic test methods for common components, and it covers both web and native apps. And there's lots of demos, including videos of how things should be rendered in or announced in screen readers and so forth. And you'll probably find this quite useful as a developer for exactly what is the correct way that you would expect this control to be to behave when keyboard navigating in a screen reader and so on. Definitely worth looking at. This one you'll find in the App Store. It's iOS only though, but basically it's similar to this. It's got examples of every single component that you might use in your iOS app, with just examples of how it should and how it shouldn't be implemented. And just as an app, so you can literally run the screen reader with this app, and you will basically see this is what good sounds like, this is what bad sounds like. Yeah, finally, much of this stuff is actually a matter of debate. You might think that if you just follow the WCAG guidelines and go through all of the checklists and follow certain design patterns, that's going to be enough. But I've been on accessibility discussion groups for years and years and years and years, and these things are endlessly debated. Things are not clear-cut. Experts sometimes disagree about things, and the particular case you are implementing might be from the test case that you might see on the documentation. So people are constantly debating these matters, and you need to speak to the experts to get sort of expert insight in that. So this Slack group is sort of says popular about 15,000 people or so, but all of the thought leaders in the accessibility community are there and contributing literally daily. So you actually need an invite to get in. So anybody can email me and I'll invite you, or if you are the first person, invite your colleagues as well. It's not exclusive or anything, but there's just not any other way of getting in except by being invited. But follow this daily. If you follow these conversations, you will learn so much about just the practical aspects of implementing websites and apps accessibly. That's everything I've got. Any questions, or are we out of time?
Questions?
So if we were to test, so the conformance level on a typical
tomorrow let's say tomorrow a new client average situation they call you to know about accessibility, what from zero like is this website is making a right bleed to 100%, everything is perfect. What can the range of this back?
Yeah, well, needless to say, we see both ends of the spectrum. The most recent one we did, we were very lucky that the developers of it's a large company, one of my biggest clients. Fortunately, they had been taking accessibility seriously for some time. For quite a large site, we filed only like 170 issues or so out of several hundred pages. On the other hand, I looked at another website which we might be doing an audit on, where we would be finding almost 100 issues per page, which is a complete and utter mess. And it's actually quite useful to factor that into your sort of estimates, because giving a kind of a flat fee for an accessibility audit is a little bit foolish, because you will definitely need to set some degree of scope as to how many journeys and how many pages would be included in that, and also you have a sense as to how big how mature are they in terms of accessibility. So are you going to be finding millions of issues on every single page, or maybe more advanced things? So nowadays, fortunately, the majority of things finding is at least making a reasonable effort. So I think most of them are beyond the hopeless level, but you will find plenty of ones which are completely hopeless.
Attached to that, partially related question. Have you noticed kind of a divide, a regional divide in terms of accessibility? In my experience, I noticed apps that need to have access to the US market, they tend to be much more compliant. Later on, they told me, because in the US, if it needs, somebody is going to sue you. In other places, there is less of a risk, so there is also pressure to
Ye- Yeah, actually, most of the you look at the case law examples of accessibility lawsuits. Most of those cases are American. I mean, the Section 508 in the Americans with Disabilities Act, those legislations were some of the very, very first things coming with it as well. So we're definitely there early, and that's part of it too. And might be something to do with being a more litigious society, and also the um, the fact that you can have class action lawsuits can win large damages for complainants. That has always been more likely in America than anywhere else. But it's going to change with the introduction of the European Accessibility Act, which has got a lot more teeth than the European legislation used to in the past. So it's probably going to, quite likely, Europe is going to be taking the lead on that the way it has on GDPR as well.
Any more questions? Oh, many questions. Yeah, one thing to mention is that I don't know how many of you use React here. How many of you know there is this tool called Axe? Axe? Yeah, I've been using it for the website for CityJS. I use Next. And there is another tool that it has been taken by the system. Whenever I compile the website, it shows me all the accessibility issues because if you do that, I get these hydration issues. So probably get it on a React as well. So yeah, if you don't fix your accessibility, you get the hydration issue on your React on your next. I don't know. You have something to say?
A little bit the question that when do you think is the right time to accessibility? Accessible users. What's your side of it?
Well, you probably already know what I'm going to say. That the best time is right from the start. It's very difficult to retrofit accessibility onto the existing product, and far more inefficient. So, and if you just see it part of developing correctly, then, you might just basically do that as just part of the normal way of doing things. There are cases where it might be less important. So, for example, internal tools that are not consumer-facing tools, they might not be covered by the legislation. But you can't always predict the future. So something like that might have started as an internal tool, might end up becoming the basis for something which is consumer-facing, and at a certain point, it's going to have to be accessible anyway. I mean, it's going to be so much easier if you do it during the development rather than adding it on as a layer later on. Yeah, that's definitely.
Hi. Hello. Hi, Shri. So, when you were discussing about the security of where would you classify your access based on learning or neuro diversity for including ADHD? So it was earlier in this when I was part of a project, we ran into a certain issue, but we did not know where to classify it. So take on that.
The WCAG guidelines, they do cover a broad range of disabilities, including neurodiversity. That will also be where what we should be paying attention to. You should be
My specific case of this last project was a banking application. So executive assuming they would cover all range of ADHDs. Well, I'm making it very specific to say ADHD and neurodiversity.
Yeah. it is definitely familiarize yourself with Web Accessibility Initiative documentation. They've got examples of some different needs that the different people would have, and then the impact that it has on the web content and the implementation of your content. So it's you shouldn't try to one should always be somewhat careful about making assumptions about what people need or not. I mean, the best way very often is to just include diverse communities within your user testing, within your research initially. Just and also if you've got an existing product, testing on that and finding out what is causing problems so that you can at least be aware of those issues. But the documentation and examples on the WCAG is probably going to cover all of the cases that that you might be thinking of.
So I was wondering, from your experience, does the use of React component libraries and ShadCN and all the other stuff, are they making it worse because there's a pile of stuff that nobody checked, or is it making it better because it's kind of built from the ground up to have accessibility?
I've seen lots of cases where it does make it worse. I mean, there are libraries out there that are very sort of effective in having been built with accessibility in mind. So, okay. Anyway, so there are definitely cases where React libraries have made enormous problems. I mean, on a UN project that I'm on, which is Angular, the developers there, I came up with the project late, and they did not care about accessibility in the slightest, and every button is a div, and source order is all over the place. They would have been able to do better if they were at least aware of the potential issues. And there are wonderful libraries out there which have been built with accessibility. I saw one just today, which I'll tell you afterwards. Which so definitely look in your documentation where you have with and also if you're doing your own design system, that is an excellent time to build accessibility in, because you basically solve the ones and sort of implement it wherever, basically. I'm kind of old school, so I tend to from a pre-React world, so things were a little easier to make accessible back then. Yes. Yeah, exactly. So it's but sometimes it feels like they are kind of needlessly reinventing components using just divs and overlaying it with attributes and so forth. Whereas if they had a native so yeah, definitely look at evaluate it into accessibility before you adopt it. Okay.
Hey everybody, Kent C. Dodds here, and I am so excited about CityJS London happening in April, the 23rd to the 25th. It's going to be awesome, and I'm really excited to see you there. I'm going to be giving a talk titled Principles-Based Programming, where I'm going to talk about some of the principles that I use to guide my decisions. To be a little bit more specific, I have this project called the Epic Stack, which is a project starter and a reference. You can use it to start up a new project and build apps the way that I build them, or just reference it. And actually, I've seen a lot of people just have the Epic Stack up in like one cursor instance, and then they'll ask it questions about that code base as they're working on their own project. And so it is a really great guide for people even who are not building their apps the same way I do and everything. But the reason I mention that is because of the principles that transcend the specific tools. So you may not be using the tools that I'm using in the Epic stack, but the decision documents that I have in there that kind of guide all the decisions that we're making, as well as the examples that are littered throughout the code base and how to build applications, can be applied with whatever tools or technologies that you're using. And so I want to talk a little bit about that, not specifically about the Epic stack, but about the principles that I have used to guide the decisions that I have made in here. And even beyond that, I don't want to just shove down a bunch of my own personal principles down your throat, but in my talk, I'm going to talk about why having principles and thinking through them intentionally will help you in the decisions that you make. So you can iterate faster, you can be more confident in the things that you're doing. So even just putting together the Epic programming principles that I have has just been really helpful for me in making sure that I have a clear understanding of the way that I like to develop software, and I can articulate that well. So I could work in a team well, I can convince my coworkers of the way that I feel about things. So there's a lot of really great things that you can learn and accomplish because you are principles based. So it's coming up in April. I'm very much looking forward to it. Love London. I hope to see you there. Hey everybody, Kent C. Dodds here, and I am so excited about CityJS London happening in April, the 23rd to the 25th. It's going to be awesome, and I'm really excited to see you there. I'm going to be giving a talk titled Principles-Based Programming, where I'm going to talk about some of the principles that I use to guide my decisions. To be a little bit more specific, I have this project called the Epic Stack, which is a project starter and a reference. You can use it to start up a new project and build apps the way that I build them, or just reference it. And actually, I've seen a lot of people just have the Epic Stack up in like one cursor instance, and then they'll ask it questions about that code base as they're working on their own project. And so it is a really great guide for people even who are not building their apps the same way I do and everything. But the reason I mention that is because of the principles that transcend the specific tools. So you may not be using the tools that I'm using in the Epic stack, but the decision documents that I have in there that kind of guide all the decisions that we're making, as well as the examples that are littered throughout the code base and how to build applications, can be applied with whatever tools or technologies that you're using. And so I want to talk a little bit about that, not specifically about the Epic stack, but about the principles that I have used to guide the decisions that I have made in here. And even beyond that, I don't want to just shove down a bunch of my own personal principles down your throat, but in my talk, I'm going to talk about why having principles and thinking through them intentionally will help you in the decisions that you make. So you can iterate faster, you can be more confident in the things that you're doing. So even just putting together the Epic programming principles that I have has just been really helpful for me in making sure that I have a clear understanding of the way that I like to develop software, and I can articulate that well. So I could work in a team well, I can convince my coworkers of the way that I feel about things. So there's a lot of really great things that you can learn and accomplish because you are principles based. So it's coming up in April. I'm very much looking forward to it. Love London. I hope to see you there. Hey everybody, Kent C. Dodds here, and I am so excited about CityJS London happening in April, the 23rd to the 25th. It's going to be awesome, and I'm really excited to see you there. I'm going to be giving a talk titled Principles-Based Programming, where I'm going to talk about some of the principles that I use to guide my decisions. To be a little bit more specific, I have this project called the Epic Stack, which is a project starter and a reference. You can use it to start up a new project and build apps the way that I build them, or just reference it. And actually, I've seen a lot of people just have the Epic Stack up in like one cursor instance, and then they'll ask it questions about that code base as they're working on their own project. And so it is a really great guide for people even who are not building their apps the same way I do and everything. But the reason I mention that is because of the principles that transcend the specific tools. So you may not be using the tools that I'm using in the Epic stack, but the decision documents that I have in there that kind of guide all the decisions that we're making, as well as the examples that are littered throughout the code base and how to build applications, can be applied with whatever tools or technologies that you're using. And so I want to talk a little bit about that, not specifically about the Epic stack, but about the principles that I have used to guide the decisions that I have made in here. And even beyond that, I don't want to just shove down a bunch of my own personal principles down your throat, but in my talk, I'm going to talk about why having principles and thinking through them intentionally will help you in the decisions that you make. So you can iterate faster, you can be more confident in the things that you're doing. So even just putting together the Epic programming principles that I have has just been really helpful for me in making sure that I have a clear understanding of the way that I like to develop software, and I can articulate that well. So I could work in a team well, I can convince my coworkers of the way that I feel about things. So there's a lot of really great things that you can learn and accomplish because you are principles based. So it's coming up in April. I'm very much looking forward to it. Love London. I hope to see you there. Hey everybody, Kent C. Dodds here, and I am so excited about CityJS London happening in April, the 23rd to the 25th. It's going to be awesome, and I'm really excited to see you there. I'm going to be giving a talk titled Principles-Based Programming, where I'm going to talk about some of the principles that I use to guide my decisions. To be a little bit more specific, I have this project called the Epic Stack, which is a project starter and a reference. You can use it to start up a new project and build apps the way that I build them, or just reference it. And actually, I've seen a lot of people just have the Epic Stack up in like one cursor instance, and then they'll ask it questions about that code base as they're working on their own project. And so it is a really great guide for people even who are not building their apps the same way I do and everything. But the reason I mention that is because of the principles that transcend the specific tools. So you may not be using the tools that I'm using in the Epic stack, but the decision documents that I have in there that kind of guide all the decisions that we're making, as well as the examples that are littered throughout the code base and how to build applications, can be applied with whatever tools or technologies that you're using. And so I want to talk a little bit about that, not specifically about the Epic stack, but about the principles that I have used to guide the decisions that I have made in here. And even beyond that, I don't want to just shove down a bunch of my own personal principles down your throat, but in my talk, I'm going to talk about why having principles and thinking through them intentionally will help you in the decisions that you make. So you can iterate faster, you can be more confident in the things that you're doing. So even just putting together the Epic programming principles that I have has just been really helpful for me in making sure that I have a clear understanding of the way that I like to develop software, and I can articulate that well. So I could work in a team well, I can convince my coworkers of the way that I feel about things. So there's a lot of really great things that you can learn and accomplish because you are principles based. So it's coming up in April. I'm very much looking forward to it. Love London. I hope to see you there. Hey everybody, Kent C. Dodds here, and I am so excited about CityJS London happening in April, the 23rd to the 25th. It's going to be awesome, and I'm really excited to see you there. I'm going to be giving a talk titled Principles-Based Programming, where I'm going to talk about some of the principles that I use to guide my decisions. To be a little bit more specific, I have this project called the Epic Stack, which is a project starter and a reference. You can use it to start up a new project and build apps the way that I build them, or just reference it. And actually, I've seen a lot of people just have the Epic Stack up in like one cursor instance, and then they'll ask it questions about that code base as they're working on their own project. And so it is a really great guide for people even who are not
all the way from San Francisco. So yeah, it's not every day that these things happen. So yeah, enjoy.
All right. So, hello everyone. I'm Jason Mays, Web AI lead at Google. But today I've come to share a story as a fellow developer. And basically, I'm going to be telling you why you should start investigating machine learning on the client side in JavaScript. Okay, in SuperPowers for the next web application. Why is it not going to the next page? Wow, 1 second. There we go. Okay. So first, let's formally define what I mean by web AI, which is a term I coined to stand out versus cloud-based AI systems, which are popular back in the day. Now, web AI is essentially the art of using machine learning models on the client side in JavaScript in superpowers in your application, which is running on your own device's processor, graphics card, or NPU. Using JavaScript and surrounding web technologies like WebAssembly, WebGPU, or emerging standards like WebNN for acceleration. And in some cases, the model might even be built into the browser itself and exposed to JavaScript developers via emerging APIs for common tasks like prompting, summarization, and even translation. Now, all of this is different from cloud AI, whereby in that case, of course, the model would execute on the server side and be accessed via some kind of API instead, which means you need an active internet connection to talk to the cloud API at all times to provide those advanced capabilities. Now then, as web developers and designers, we have the privilege of working across industries when we work with our customers. And in a similar manner, artificial intelligence is likely to be leveraged by all of those industries in the future to make them more efficient than they were before. In fact, in a few years' time, your customers will expect AI features in their next project to keep up with their competition. So now is the perfect time to start upskilling in these areas as JavaScript developers. Now, if you're not using client-side AI right now, I want to illustrate how fast this is actually growing and why you should take a look before you're left behind. Now, I've only got statistics for Google's web AI libraries, so worldwide it's probably higher, but in the past 2 years, alone, averaged 600 million downloads per year of TensorFlow.js and web-based models and libraries. Bringing us to roughly 1.2 billion downloads in that time, and we're on track to continue growing in usage. But why should you care about web AI? Well, surely you can do all of this in the cloud, right? Well, you can get some superpowers that are just not possible with a cloud alternative. Now, I know we all come from different industries, so think about how any of these can apply to yours as we go through them. First up, it's privacy, as no data from things like the camera, the microphone, or even the text that you send to the LLM need to be sent to some remote AI model on a server, which protects the user's personal data. And a great example of this is shown here by a company called Include Health, who use browser-based pose estimation models to perform remote physiotherapy without sending any imagery to the cloud. Instead, only the resulting range of motion and the statistics from the session are sent, allowing the patient to perform their checkup from the comfort of their own home using a regular browser and a regular webcam while also protecting their privacy. You've also got the ability to run offline on the device itself. So you can even perform tasks in areas of low or no connectivity after the initial page load. And you might be wondering, why would a web app need to work offline? Well, in this great example by Hugo Zanini, he performed product placement verification using a web app in supermarkets for a retail customer that he was working with. And we all know how bad the data connections are in supermarkets, make a big metal cage, right? So he basically leveraged TensorFlow.js to run a custom object detection model right in the browser that can work entirely offline and then syncs data back when the connection is available when they leave the supermarket later on. Now, you can imagine applying similar techniques to retail analytics solutions to monitor what objects are interacted with in the shopping aisles, or maybe digital kiosks in those aisles to understand how busy an area is at different times of the day, to understand footfall and all that kind of stuff. All of it in the browser with JS. Or what about healthcare solutions in pharmacies to count pills more effectively for prescriptions, and much, much more, all working offline to conform with regulations in those particular industries. Next is low latency. which can enable you to run many models in real time. You don't have to wait for data to be sent to the cloud and back again, which might be significant if you're mobile phone data collection, for example. As such, many of our models, like these ones from Media, body pose and segmentation, can run over 120 frames per second on a mid-range laptop GPU with great accuracy, as you can see on this slide. You've also got the cost, as you need to hire and keep running expensive cloud-based graphics cards and processors, which means you can now run generative AI directly in the web browser, like this large language model on the left, without breaking the bank. And we're now seeing production-ready web apps benefit from significant cost savings, like the example shown on the right, for advanced video processing features like background blurring and removal. And even better, you can offer a frictionless experience for your end users, as no install is required to run a web page. You just go to a link and it works, unlike setting up all the CUDA stuff on the back end. Now, in fact, Adobe are doing this right here with Adobe Photoshop Web, enabling anyone, anywhere, to use their favorite creative features on almost any device. And when it comes to the object selection tool shown on this slide, embracing the client-side machine learning for this feature provided Adobe's users with a better experience by eliminating that latency to the cloud, resulting in faster predictions and a more responsive user interface. And on that note, it also means you can leverage the reach and scale of the web. I'm preaching to the crowd here, I guess, but there's 6 billion users out there that have potentially capable devices of viewing your creation. Okay, so let's take a hypothetical situation, video conferencing. Now, you can imagine this for other use cases that might also stream audio or video data, maybe for healthcare, security cameras, and beyond. Many of these services provide background blur or background replacement for privacy, right? So let's crunch some hypothetical numbers to see the value of using client-side AI here. So first, a webcam typically produces video at 30 frames per second. So assuming an average meeting is 30 minutes in length, you're going to have 54,000 frames to process for every single meeting. So assuming 1 million meetings per day for a popular service, so that's optimistic for large companies. Sorry, not optimistic, actually, it's lower than expected. That equates to 54 billion segmentations every single day. Okay. Now, if we assume an ultra low cost of just 0.0001 cents per segmentation, that's still $5.4 million a day, or about $2 billion a year that you would have to pay in server-side costs. By performing background blurring on the client side, all of that cost goes away. And don't forget, you can even put other models to the browser, like noise cancellation, to further improve the meeting experience for your users, while reducing costs even more by running all of these features on device, just like we do in Google Meet today. Or what about bringing large language models to the browser? In the example shown here, you can see how a user can generate email to their friends for a given context and about certain requirements without any of the text actually being sent to a server. And even better, this runs really, really fast. The demo here is captured in real time. It's not sped up in any manner. Now, at this point, if you're not from an AI background, you might be wondering, well, how hard is it to run an LLM in the browser, right? Well, we've made the LLM task API that allows you to choose 4 popular models depending on your needs and use cases, and can be used in just a few lines of JavaScript. So you don't have to be an AI expert to get started with this stuff. So let's take a quick look at that. So here's the code. I'm just going to walk you through it. So first, you're going to import the MediaPipe LLM inference API, just an import, nothing too fancy there. Next, you're going to define where your large language model is hosted. You have downloaded the model from one of the links on the previous slides and then put it on your CDN somewhere. Okay. And now you define a new asynchronous function that will actually load and use the model. Inside this, you're going to specify something called a file set URL that defines the MediaPipe runtime you're going to use to actually execute the model. And here, this is using the default one that MediaPipe provides. It's safe that too. And if you wanted to, you could host that file in your own CDN. If you want the total control, you can do that. Just copy it over to your CDN. Now you can use the file set URL from the previous line to initialize this thing called MediaPipe's file set resolver. Sounds scary, but just bear with me here. And this will actually allow you to then download and use the runtime for the generative AI task you're about to perform. Okay, so next you're going to load the model by calling lm.create from model path. And for that, you're going to pass it the file set from the model URL that you provided on the previous 2 lines. And as this is a large model file, it's going to use that lovely await keyword in JavaScript to wait for that to finish downloading before we continue on with other bits of code. And we're going to find the result back to a variable called LLM. Now you've got the model loaded, you can use it to generate a response, given some input text as shown. And here you're going to store the result in a variable called answer. And with that, you can log the answer, display it on screen, or do something useful with it as you desire. And that's pretty much it. So now we're just going to call the function above to kick off a loading process and await for the results to be printed. Now, the key takeaway here is that while there are some scary sounding words like file stack resolver, anyone here can run these 10 lines of code or so and then build around it with your existing JavaScript knowledge for your own creative idea, even if you're not an AI expert. Okay, so do start playing with these things after the talk today. It's not hard to get started, even if you don't know what a file set resolver is. Don't worry about that. It's a technical thing that we decided to call it, like, for internal reasons. But basically, it's going to go grab the file and do stuff with it. Now, you can imagine turning something like this into a Chrome extension, whereby you can highlight any text on the web page, right-click, and convert it to a form suitable for social media, or maybe define some word you don't understand, all in just a few clicks for anything you come across, instead of needing to go to a third-party website to do so. I did that right here in this demo, but I made in just a few hours on the weekend using the code you just saw and a bit of regular JavaScript to kind of right clicks on the web page and grab the text and pass it to the LLM. So there's so many ideas that are just waiting to be created here. And I know all you JS devs are very creative folks, so I look forward to seeing what you make there. In fact, people are already using these models to do more advanced things, like talking to your PDF documents to ask questions about its contents without having to read it yourself, as shown in this demo by Nico Martin. And this is a great time saver, as it's a really neat use case of large language models when combined with surrounding techniques like RAG that allow you to extract the sentences from the PDF that matter and then use them as a context for the LLM to provide some answer given some question. All working locally on in your browser on your device. And notice how it even shows you the sentences generated its answer from, so you can actually reference the human written content to prove that it's not hallucinated the answer. That might be very important for a medical situation. Maybe you're going through patient records, you want to actually show where it came from and it didn't just make up the result. It's just a double check. Or what if videos could watch themselves for you to extract useful frames all by themselves? I made this demo in just one day using transformers.js, whereby I'm able to enter a sentence for what I want to look out for, such as my name in a video frame or an image of a guy standing on a plane, which is one of my hobbies when I'm not nerding out on web AI. And sure enough, it finds those frames and puts them along the bottom there, and I can then use them, save them to disk, or do something with that information. So from Chrome extensions that can supercharge your productivity to features within a web app itself, we're essentially at the start of a new era here that can really enhance your web experience. And the time is now to start exploring those ideas. In fact, right now, generative AI in the browser is in its early stages. As hardware continues to evolve with more RAM available, both to the CPU and the GPU, we shall continue to see more models ported to run in browser on your devices. It needs businesses to reimagine what they can actually do on a web page, especially for industry or task-specific situations. In fact, we could see smaller large language models in the 2 to 8 billion parameter range be tuned for specific purposes and run on consumer hardware. Right now, one can envision a hybrid approach, whereby if the client machine is powerful enough, you download and run the model there, only falling back to cloud AI in times that the device is not able to run the model, which might be true for older devices today. With time, though, more and more compute will be performed on device, so your return of investment should get better as time goes by if you've implemented a hybrid approach. So you can get some significant cost savings for your business versus paying for some API in the cloud when you implement an approach like this. And on that note, we're working on a new website to provide guidance for web developers choosing to use AI in JavaScript. And with this site, we aim to help you understand key concepts so you can discover opportunities to use new popular models to be more productive than ever. So on that site, as we're going to push more content to that throughout the year, basically. All right, so I've spoken a little bit there. I want to head over to the Web AI community and see what they're up to. These are people just like all of you except they've actually started their journey with web AI. Some of them are brand new, others have PhD, the whole spectrum. But we're going to see how they're using it already today in their products and services. So let's play the video and hopefully the sound plays.
Fundamentally, what we're going to do is build tools that allow anybody to do their true self. People that feel uncomfortable on camera, here's like a much more detailed side-by-side view of my face being captured alongside the face of the character. So what's happening is it's tracking individual facial lip shapes and then relaying that into that image and render them. I love images. The last 4 years, I've been interested in using artificial intelligence application. And this is the nice thing with the TensorFlow.js, I think, is that you can interact with the AI models. It doesn't have automatic execution, but you can actually kind of guide the models to get the result that you would want.
We see the animatronic uses face detection. Sort of a median in the wild experiment that distancing. That is what you see. We're talking face, and you can track it with without glasses. It has high frame rate, even in JavaScript. So wouldn't it be great if you could use this technology to control electronics?
So this is an example of how Cardinal Health is using. So they have a division of their company where one pharmacist can manage several locations remotely over. This runs in the background between the pharmacist and then they use robocalls, a pill counting feature that helps the pharmacist the division model, so they don't have to use the model to estimate, and then where the model has exactly.
We have these constructed, which I call neural exercise. And this is a generated data. What we're seeing here is in real motion capture data taking sessions. And you see a generated by the model. So the model seeing a certain segment of my movements is creating this distribution on it in some sense.
An engine called Yoga, and so what it does is it processes video and it detects the location on hand in this video feed. And the goal of it is that to quickly sketch some roughly similar to with on a whiteboard.
That allows you very complex solutions. And you do that with the driver interface, which helps you process without the input. So this is the first version. We do some applications. You can see that as voice taken out, the text is liquid.
We wanted to go beyond machine learning, beyond code. So that's really when we decided to expand our platform into computer. Delivering care directly to patients' homes on their own devices. With a medical device that we can run on any device, fully web-based. See these patients doing different exercises, the body or body feedback, counting their reps. We gather all that and send it to for you.
All right. So some pretty amazing demos right there. And notice not one of them used Gen AI. Okay. So there's a lot of stuff you can create for your industries without using Gen AI, and it will be a lot more efficient and explainable and cost effective too. So whilst you do Gen AI, because you're going to tick that box, you don't always need to use a sledgehammer to do something like object detection. You don't use a multimodal model to do object detection. That's a waste of compute. So just bear that in mind. So imagine using motion capture data to transform your users into a different persona to make an experience more fun, to the latest in generative AI, whereby you can even run diffusion models in a web browser incredible speeds with new browser technologies like WebGPU that are now enabled by default in Chrome in production. Things are about to get really exciting with regards to what we can expect from a web app of the future. So what types of AI models can you actually run? Okay, not everyone here is working at video conferencing companies and AI companies. So there's actually thousands of models out there that you can take and use today. And many of those can be used in just a few lines of JavaScript, and with new models coming out every single month. Now, I can't cover them in a short talk, but I can go through some of the key ones that we see coming up time and time again, and think about how you can apply these to your customers as maybe they are relevant to you. First, you've got object recognition. This allows you to understand where in the image the object is located and also how many exist, which is more powerful than image recognition alone that would not tell you where or how many, just the fact it exists. Now, you could use a model like this to create a pet camera that could notify you when your dog's been naughty eating the treats when you're out the house. And I made this example application in just one day using an off-the-shelf object detection model that's capable of recognizing 90 common objects like dogs and bowls and chairs and tables and things like that. And as you can see, it works pretty well. The dog in this video is caught red-handed as he tries to inspect the food when I'm out. And you can then set an alert to use your regular JavaScript knowledge to set yourself an SMS or ping you an alert or something as you need to. And all of this is done without having to stream the video 24/7 to a cloud server to intercept that and actually tell you when it happens. So you can save a lot of bandwidth by just doing it all locally and then just saving the frames of that moment when it captures it only. What about text toxicity detection? Here you can pass a sentence to the model and classify if it's toxic or not, and even figure out what type of toxic it is. Maybe it's an insult or a threat, for example. And again, this is not a large language model. This is natural language processing. This was before GenAI existed. This is a much smaller model, and you can train it on custom data very easily. Now, maybe something like this can be used to pre-filter comments in a web chat on your website or a commenting system on your website, or automatically to hold potentially toxic comments for moderation before they get approved and put on your blog or whatever it is. You can even extract 3D data from 2D images with the selfie depth estimation model. You can pass it a portrait image of a person and will predict how far away each pixel is in the image and the z-axis, allowing you to understand the 3D makeup of the face and body. Now, if you can do that, you can do some really cool things like image relighting. Here, I can cast for light rays around my body for a more realistic effect than was possible before, which can be great for augmented reality or lighting effects on images. And I'm sure many of you have seen those 3D images on Facebook that everyone seems to use these days. You can do this in JavaScript and it'll, in like 500 milliseconds, it'll generate the 3D image for you. So totally possible to do in JS in the moment versus having to pre-process all of that. Next, we've got our face mesh model, which is 3 megabytes in size and can recognize 468 landmarks on the human face, as you can see. And it's running at over 130 frames per second on my very old laptop that's running at NVIDIA 1070. Now, we're seeing companies like this, like Modiface, who's part of L'Oreal, use this technology in production web apps. The thing to note here is that this lady on the right-hand side is not wearing any lipstick. Instead, they're using our face mesh model combined with WebGL shaders to shade in her lips in a realistic manner to visualize what this might look like if she was to buy the product. And this was very popular in COVID times, of course, when no one wanted to share lipsticks in the stores. So out of necessity, these things are born, and it turns into a very interesting way to try things before you buy them. We've also got models for your hands that can track multiple hands in 2D or 3D at over 120 frames per second, again on a mid-range laptop with a dedicated graphics card. A model like this could be used for gesture recognition or even touch interfaces for human-computer interaction. And with a bit of extra training, you can even do simple sign language interpretation, so pretty handy. And then continuing on the human body theme, you can also detect 2D or estimated 3D poses for 33 key points at over 150 frames per second, again on a machine with a dedicated graphics card. And this model has 3 forms, a full, a light, and a heavy version that allows you to trade an accuracy versus speed situation there, so you can choose what's best for your users. Well, building on this, what about full body segmentation? With a model like this, you can differentiate the human body from the background of the scene. If you can do that, you can blur people's bodies for privacy like we do in Street View, or you can apply effects to the background for a stylistic effect or something like that. There's also a specialized version of the segmentation model that's focused on the upper body, and that's much better for video conferencing solutions. And we use this kind of model in Google Meet at Google. All right, so you've got all these models that make you feel like a superhero, but how can it actually help you, right? So the key thing is to set the right model for the right situation, and you can then provide your customers with superpowers themselves when you apply those models to their industries. In fact, at Google, we often need to explore all of these options for a given task. So we created a system called Visual Blocks to do that in an efficient manner. It's a framework I worked on with my team that allows you to go from an AI-powered idea to a working prototype faster than ever, built around JavaScript web components. So it's super easy to extend by anyone who knows JavaScript. And even better, once you've built a building block to do a thing, you can chain them together with other powerful blocks to bring your idea to life without getting lost in all the code. And it's not just us using this. The examples on this slide were actually contributed by Hugging Face, who've been adding new client-side AI models via transformers.js, and these are now available to use via Visual Blocks in just a few clicks. Try them out and see what you can make with them. So you can just click the links on the link shown, and they'll launch immediately in the browser, and you can try them out for yourself. And here you can see a glimpse of the future, whereby a research team at Google used a large language model to create a Visual Blocks pipeline for me to solve some problem I had, like creating an augmented reality effect, just by explaining in plain English what I wanted, and it made the prototype for me using the available building blocks to create a solution that fit the description at the top there. And you'll notice that initially it gives like some sunglasses without a transparency effect. So we refine it and say include transparency, then it finds a PNG and uses that instead, all automatically. So that's where we're getting to. And this was actually 2 years ago research, so it's come much further than this now. So I'd just like to end by saying there's very few opportunities in one's life to be the beginning of a new era like this. I, for one, remember when the internet came out for the first time. I am old. And basically, web AI feels the same as that, only magnified 100x more. I personally believe that in the future, we as web developers will build AI-compatible websites, whereby you have the option to just talk to them naturally via text or voice to perform any of the tasks that they support. And they can delegate those tasks to an AI agent instead, maybe via an AI.json file, like we've got a robots text today. Maybe it's an AI.json file that you define these functions that it can call. Instead of us as humans trying to manually understand some arbitrary workflow or user experience. And sites that are not AI compatible might be out of fashion pretty fast. Just like when we moved from desktop to mobile versions of our sites, and we're all worried about staying in business and we wanted mobile versions of our sites. I think the same thing will happen again, but with an agentic lens in the future. Now, I hope in this talk, I've been able to provide you a tiny glimpse into the future about why you should start investigating web AI today, because everyone here has a chance of a lifetime, literally, you're at the beginning of this, to shape the future of this fast-growing space. And I hope all of you will join me on this adventure. So do tag me in anything you make, or if you've got any suggestions for any of the technologies mentioned in this talk, you can connect with me on social media using the links there. And if you make anything, use the WebAI hashtag. Although I've noticed we've got some competition with crypto who came up with WebAI crypto now. So there's a bit of a battle going on there, but hopefully you can get through the spam and find all of our community's posts. So thank you, and we'll take some questions. And of course, I'll be available afterwards as well for one-to-ones. So thank you. Any questions? Oh, front or back? Whoever's got the mic is closest to anyone at the moment, and we'll work our way down the room. Yeah. Oh, at the front here. Yeah.
Thank you for your talk. First of all, very insightful. I really like it. Quick question: how would you decide? Okay, this is something that has a complexity for which I can do it with a, let's say, client model. Instead, this is better to go to cloud AI. Is some kind of alchemical balance that you only get with experience, or maybe there's a rule of thumb that you want to share? What would be your preference?
Everyone's needs are different. But as I hinted at the beginning of the presentation, there's some situations like maybe you're working with a legal company or a healthcare company, they really need the privacy aspect. In that situation, client side is really the best way for them to go to tick the boxes they need to tick for their industry standards and things like that. And I also see a lot of startups struggling with costs of hosting things in the cloud, especially as they scale to like tens of thousands of users. It starts to eat up a lot of their budget quite quickly. And by moving some of that compute to the client side, you can get some of that cost back to actually pay your employees and other things instead, right? So, so I think everyone's different, but use the right thing for what you need to do. If cloud AI is working for you, that's great. If you can afford it, that's great. But if you are constrained for privacy, low latency, real-time applications, or offline, if you're working in the middle of a field somewhere for some reason for your client, then client-side AI might be the way to go for that. And also, this is the beginning of the journey, as I said. So Microsoft's AI PC narrative and Intel's Meteor Lake processors and beyond are starting to have like NPUs built in, and that will make things even more efficient on the client side in terms of power and cost of the devices and all that stuff. So I think if you just take a hybrid approach today, you'll get the benefits of both. You can pick a switch as you need to, but you'll be ready for the future when the time is right for you, I guess. So, yeah.
The other second quick question is more of a curiosity in mind. From your point of view, how close do you think that we are getting a face and voice cloning in real time client side? Because that also brings a lot of complexity in terms of privacy issues, and so I might simply be somebody else.
Yeah. I can run a TTS model on the client side. There's one called Coro that is 82 million parameters and runs very nicely on most laptops. And that has predefined the voices, but they don't support custom voices, I guess for reasons, as you mentioned. But I'm sure that will change as someone gets frustrated with not having a custom voice, and someone will make a version that does support custom voices at some point. The training process of that probably would be done on the cloud, and then once you've made your custom voice, you then deploy it onto your CDN to then ingest into your web app to use as the voice of your choice. So yeah, most of the libraries today are about inference, not retraining on the client side. TensorFlow.js did support retraining, but newer models, especially like generative in nature, are better fared for some of our other libraries that are focused purely on inference to get every ounce of performance out of them. So transfer learning for that right now, I think, is not happening anytime soon, but you could do it on the cloud and then deploy it as the custom voice. I guess that's where we are today, at least. Thank you for the question. You can run yourself a nice little web AI backpack as well. There you go. Cool. Next question. I think at the back, someone had their hands up as well.
If you build something nice in the visual blocks,
yes,
is there somehow an easy way to translate it to your API, or do you need to like?
That's a great question. Yes.
Tweak your parameters.
So currently, we don't have an export function right now. It's very much like a prototype stage situation. But our hope is that you can like select the subgraph and then right click, export the JS bundle, and then all that logic will just be bundled up, and then you use it like any API or library in JS, and then you choose like a black box and it does its thing. And that's our like ideal end goal. But right now it's you use it via the website I just linked, and you can write custom web components that are hosted on local hosts, so like we don't see them or anything. You can develop locally and just ideate faster with your team, essentially, because maybe someone on your team is really good at databases and another person's good at AI and another person's good at computer vision. They can make nodes to the things that they care about, and then someone else, like the PM, can then go joining together to make a new thing, and everyone can start contributing to innovation, basically. So in that sense, we use it internally with a number of teams I'm not allowed to mention, but big teams that do good things, and they use it to prototype faster than they could do before. But yes, maybe one day we'll have that export ability, which is the final piece of the puzzle to wrap it all up. But for now, you'd have to take the logic that you've already written in those custom components and just extract that and then bundle them together to make the pipeline manually yourself. But you've got it all figured out, at least in the flow. So, and if you want to come down and grab one of these as well, one for you. So I'll pass it back.
But we've got time for one more
I'll just
question
pass it
before we
back to the
possibly
guy
remove
that
from
doesn't
the
have it.
One more question. Right. Go.
Yeah, someone choose somebody. Where are they?
Jason, essentially great talk, first of all. I have 3 quick questions. They're all related, so I'll ask them in succession. So hybrid models make a lot of sense. Do you have any guidance on how to run that? Like, is it literally the same model running on server and client? Like, do you have any examples of that?
Yes, it could be the same model, or you could implement an approach where the cloud model is like the 500 billion parameter beast, and then the client-side one is the freemium model that you give to people on the free tier or something, because it doesn't cost you any money. So you can like have a smaller model that maybe isn't as good, but gets the job done in 99% of the cases. You know, there's many ways you can split this up. That's your choice at the end of the day how you want to do that. Yeah.
Well, makes sense. I have the most annoying question that I'm sure you get all the time. Browser compatibility.
Yes.
Like what does that look like for this?
It depends which model you're running. If you're using our TensorFlow JS models from the older days, they run pretty much everywhere, even on my mobile phones, on Safaris and all that kind of stuff. If you are using the latest generative AI models, they leverage web GPU for acceleration. So you do need a Chromium browser today if you're going to use it in production. But I believe Safari and Firefox and others they have web GPU in testing, and it's a web standard, so it could come out in fairly soon, I hope. So that will be a solved problem in the not too distant future. Yeah.
And then last quick question: Is that how Google Meet does the essentially background blurring? Then, like does it do web GPU on Chrome and then fall back on others? Then.
Good question. I have to ask them for their implementation details. We can also use WebAssembly for acceleration on the CPU alone as well. We won't get as great performance, but again, for non-Gen AI models, you saw the pose estimation stuff and that kind of stuff working. Those are running on my CPU, I believe, in one of the examples. So, like they can run pretty fast on CPU, but it's these larger models, the Gen AI models, that really need the GPU horsepower. Yeah, anything over like 10 megabytes in size benefits from that, like offload to the GPU.
So something like the background blurring, it doesn't need to be super accurate.
There's a sweet point after which it makes sense. Yeah,
exactly. That makes sense. Thank you so much.
Cool. Thank you.
Right. Just squeeze them in. Thank you very much. Thank you. I'll take that.
Yep.
Right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming to CityJS. We really appreciate it. Oh, not CityJS. Sorry, Jsmonthly. Good God. I would not have my head screwed on. How do you get this? Oh, here we go. Entire screen. There we go. Lovely. Yes. Please come to CityJS London. It'll be an absolute blast. 20% off. Scan the QR code or using Jsmonthly if you go to the website. We want to thank Foolproof for hosting. Before we forget, thank you for having us here, special notice. If you are sitting in the back chairs, there are around the corner towards the side. There's a chair stacker. Please stack them on your way out because it helps us clean up here more easily. The next Jsmonthly is on the 20th with talks to be announced. I know that Willow at the back is giving a talk. So if you do, yeah, there you go. So if you do want to see Willow speak about something, and other speaker not yet announced, please do come. We are going to the Commercial Tavern Pub, which is just up the road. Please grab some pizza before you leave because I wanted to know what happened last time. Thank you. Oh, some people laughed. Some people laughed. Brilliant. Speaking of laughing, I'm running a comedy event on the 8th of March. It's for charity. If you'd like to come, please scan the QR code or come up to me and ask for more details. It's in Shoreditch, 133 Bethnal Green Road. Very central location. Not too far from here. Please come. I bought stuff for 100 people. We haven't sold 100 tickets. I'm in debt. Right. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming. And I hope to see you the next one on the 20th and on the 23rd to 25th of April after that and beyond. Is that supposed to come up?